I joked if you died, I'd be married again in a year. Now he's gone, and I can't even get a date. I still can't believe how something so stupid could blow up my entire life. I'm Melody, 34, and I had what I thought was a pretty good marriage until my big mouth ruined everything. Richard and I were together for 8 years, married for 5. We had our little house, 2 cars that mostly worked, and enough money to go out on weekends. I handled the social calendar and fun stuff, while Richard took care of boring things like bills and fixing stuff around the house. It worked for us. I've always been the outgoing one who says what I think without a filter. Sometimes I can be a little harsh, but that's just my personality. Richard knew who I was when he married me. He was always the quiet, responsible one who'd laugh at my jokes, even when they were at his expense. That's just how we operated. I'd tease him about being so cautious with money, or how long it took him to make a decision, and he'd smile or roll his eyes. Our friends loved coming over, because I made sure things were fun. I'd plan these dinner parties where the wine would flow, and we'd all end up playing ridiculous games until 2 a.m. Richard would quietly refill everyone's drinks and clean up my cooking mess, while I kept the conversation going. It was a good system. When we'd go out with other couples, I'd sometimes compare Richard to the other husbands. I'd make these little comments later like, maybe you could take some style tips from Jake, or wouldn't it be nice if we could afford a vacation like theirs? I didn't mean anything by it. I was just saying what I noticed. Sometimes Richard would get quiet after I said stuff like that, but he never actually told me to stop. How was I supposed to know it bothered him if he didn't speak up? That's his problem, not mine. Our sex life was, well, it existed. Sometimes I'd make jokes about that too, especially when I was drinking with my girlfriends. Richard would turn red, and I'd tell him to lighten up. A little embarrassment never killed anyone. Money was sometimes tight because I like nice things. Sue me. Richard would get all anxious about the credit card bill, and I'd remind him that we only live once. He'd eventually give in because he knew I'd just give him the silent treatment if he pushed back too hard. I controlled our social media presence. I'd post curated photos of us looking happy on date nights or vacations, with captions like, "So blessed with this man." Nobody needed to see the arguments before or after those perfect photos were taken. My parents thought Richard was such a nice young man, which is code for boring. His family was polite to me, especially his mom, Darlene, but I always felt like they were judging me. His brother Caleb barely hid his dislike. Whatever, you don't marry the family, right? That's the thing about our marriage that worked. He let me be me. I got to do what I wanted, say what I wanted, and he just dealt with it. How was I supposed to know he was keeping score all those years? Everything was normal until that stupid dinner party. We were hosting our usual group, Trisha and her husband, a couple from Richard's work, and my coworker Jenna with her new boyfriend. We were all on our 3rd or 4th glass of wine. The conversation drifted to some mutual friend who had lost her husband and remarried within 2 years. Someone made a comment about how quickly she'd moved on, and I don't know why, but I looked right at Richard and said, "Honestly, if you died, I'd probably be married again within a year. No offense, but I'm not built to be alone. Might even upgrade." The room went quiet, and I felt that awkward energy, so I doubled down. "What? It's true. Why would he care? He'd be dead." Trisha forced a laugh, and conversation eventually moved on, but Richard was quieter than usual for the rest of the night. After everyone left, he finally said something. "Why would you say something like that, Melody? Even as a joke?" He wasn't yelling, which almost made it worse. He sounded genuinely confused and hurt. I rolled my eyes. "Oh my God, are you seriously upset about that? I was a little drunk. It was just the first thing that popped into my head." "It's not funny to joke about me dying and you replacing me so quickly. Like, I mean nothing." He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, looking at me with this expression I wasn't used to seeing. "Don't make such a big deal out of it," I said, slamming a wine glass into the rack. It was a joke, not a policy statement. "Would you really just move on that fast if something happened to me?" he asked. That's when I started getting annoyed. "Oh my God, you're being so insecure right now," I snapped. "It was just a joke. When did you get so sensitive? This is why I can't tell you anything." It's not about being sensitive, Melody. It's about respect. Would you be okay if I joked about replacing you a month after your funeral? He was using that calm, reasonable voice that always makes me feel like I'm being managed. If I was dead, I wouldn't care. That's the point. I threw my hands up. You're making this into something it's not. I think it's exactly what it is, a glimpse into how you really feel, he said quietly. That really set me off. Oh, please, Dr. Phil, stop analyzing one stupid joke I made while drinking. Grow up, Richard. Not everything has some deep, hidden meaning. He just looked at me for a long moment, then said, I'm going to bed, and walked away. I figured he'd be over it by morning. He always got over our arguments quickly. But something was different this time. The next day, he was still quiet. When I asked if he was still mad about that stupid joke, he just said, I'm not mad, Melody. I'm disappointed. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Richard was coming home later than usual. He said it was work, but he didn't offer details. He stopped automatically doing the dishes after dinner or taking out the trash without being asked. Small things, but noticeable. One Sunday morning, I realized our bills hadn't been paid online like they normally were. When I mentioned it, Richard just shrugged and said, I figured you'd take care of it this month. Like what? That was always his job in our arrangement. I started finding him on his phone more, smiling at texts, but angling the screen away when I'd walk by. When I casually picked up his phone to check the time, okay, I was snooping, he actually took it back from me. Since when do you have secrets? I asked, half joking. Since when do you respect my privacy? He shot back. His behavior was getting increasingly irritating. I'd make a normal comment about something, and instead of his usual silent acceptance, he'd push back. Who was this person? Where was my easygoing husband? The more he pulled away, the more I tried to regain control. I'd check his phone when he was in the shower, give him the silent treatment when he pushed back on my comments, criticize him more than usual in front of friends. But instead of bringing him back in line, it just seemed to make him more distant. I still didn't think our marriage was in trouble, though. People don't just walk away because of one joke and a rough patch. I figured he would snap out of it. How wrong I was. About 3 months after the joke, I came home from work to find Richard sitting at our kitchen table with a serious look on his face. We need to talk, Melody, he said in a voice I barely recognized. What's going on? I asked, trying to sound casual. I've been doing a lot of thinking since that dinner party, he began. Not just about the joke, but about our entire relationship. I rolled my eyes. Are you still hung up on that? I told you it was just a joke. Yes, I know that's what you think. He cut me off. But it wasn't just the joke, Melody. It was your reaction when I told you it hurt me, and it made me start paying attention to patterns I've been ignoring for years. What patterns? I crossed my arms. Richard reached for his phone, tapped the screen, and suddenly I heard my own voice filling the kitchen. God, Richard. Could you be any more boring? Even your brother has more personality than you, and he works with spreadsheets all day. My mouth fell open as I recognized the conversation from a dinner with friends. Are you recording me? What the hell, Richard? He tapped again and another clip played, followed by my distinctive laugh. My therapist suggested I record our interactions, he said quietly, to help me recognize unhealthy patterns. Your therapist? Since when do you have a therapist? I was genuinely shocked. Since 2 months ago, when I realized how unhappy I've been. His voice was steady. Listening to these recordings helped me see that what I thought was playful teasing is actually constant criticism. You belittle me, Melody. In front of our friends, in private, online, you make me the butt of your jokes and expect me to smile about it. That's just how I am. You've always known that, I protested, but my heart was racing. Yes, and I've always accepted it. That's on me. He leaned forward, but I don't want to accept it anymore. I deserve better than to be treated like this. I would rather be single than continue being treated like I don't matter. The word single hit me like a slap. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm considering divorce, Melody. He said it simply. The joke about remarrying if I died, it made me realize how disposable I am to you. But it wasn't just the joke. It was your complete inability to acknowledge how it made me feel. You turned it around on me, made me think I was crazy for being hurt. This is insane, I said, pacing. You're throwing away 8 years over one stupid comment? No, I'm considering ending a relationship that's become toxic because of thousands of comments, dismissals, and moments where my feelings didn't matter to you. He stood up. I've taken some time off work. I'm going to stay with Jake for a while. I need space to think. I switched tactics, feeling panic rise. Richard, come on. We can work this out. I'll be more careful about what I say. I didn't realize it bothered you so much. That's just it, Melody. He looked at me with something like pity. You never bothered to find out what bothers me. And even now, you're not actually sorry for hurting me. You're just worried about losing your comfortable setup. I watched in disbelief as he picked up a duffel bag I hadn't even noticed by the door. He'd packed already. How long will you be gone? I asked, still not processing what was happening. I don't know, he answered honestly. But I do know I won't be coming back to the same relationship. Things have to change, or this needs to end. After he left, I sat in our suddenly too quiet house, stunned. How had things escalated so quickly? It was just a stupid joke at a dinner party. Anyone else would have laughed it off. I decided to give him a few days to cool off. He'd realize he was overreacting and come home. I'd be gracious about it, maybe apologize for the joke without admitting I was wrong, and things would go back to normal. But a week passed, then 2, and Richard only communicated through brief texts about practical matters. When I tried calling, he'd answer politely but keep the conversations short. When I suggested he come home so we could talk properly, he said he wasn't ready. I tried everything. Angry texts accusing him of abandonment, tearful voicemails, casual messages acting like nothing was wrong, even sexy photos. Nothing worked. So I turned to our friends for help. That's when I got my second shock. Most of them sided with Richard. I think you should really listen to what he's saying, Mel, Trisha said when I met her for coffee. The way you talk to him sometimes, it's pretty harsh. Oh please, not you two, I groaned. It's just my sense of humor. He's known that forever. There's a difference between having a sharp wit and constantly putting someone down, she replied. And honestly, that joke about replacing him if he died, that was pretty cold, even for you. I felt betrayed. Trisha was supposed to be my friend. So what, you've all been judging me behind my back? She sighed. No one's judging Melody, but several of us have noticed how Richard shrinks around you sometimes. How he flinches a little when you start a sentence with, honestly, Richard, because he knows what's coming. I left that coffee shop fuming. Had everyone been secretly analyzing my marriage? My attempts to rally support backfired spectacularly. Each friend I reached out to had some version of the same message. Maybe this is a chance to reflect on how you treat him. Even my own mother betrayed me. Honey, she said carefully, you've always been strong-willed, just like your father. But sometimes being right isn't as important as being kind. I am kind, I protested. Richard's never complained before. Maybe because you don't make it safe for him to complain, she suggested gently. I hung up on her. My own mother. By the 1-month mark of our separation, I was a mess. The house was falling apart without Richard's maintenance. Bills were piling up because I didn't know all the account passwords, and I'd had to cancel a dinner party because I couldn't figure out how to fix the dishwasher. It was humiliating to realize how much I depended on him for the practical stuff. Even more humiliating was the growing awareness that maybe our friends had a point about how I treated him. But admitting that felt like losing, and I've never been good at losing. So instead of self-reflection, I doubled down on trying to win Richard back. I showed up at Jake's place unannounced. Richard wasn't there. I sent daily texts oscillating between apologies and accusations. I even posted vague, melancholy quotes on social media designed to make Richard feel guilty. Nothing worked. If anything, each attempt seemed to push him further away. Then came the day I needed our tax documents and couldn't find them in our home office. Tearing apart Richard's desk drawers in frustration, I found something unexpected. A letter, signed by Jake, Caleb, and several of our other friends, dated about 2 weeks after the dinner party incident. Richard, it began, we're writing this because we care about you, and we're concerned. The way Melody treats you isn't normal or healthy. I sank into Richard's office chair as I read a detailed catalog of my supposed offenses. Publicly humiliating him, dismissing his feelings, controlling his actions, isolating him from friends, manipulating him with silence when I didn't get my way. Each point included specific examples, dates, places. They'd been watching me, taking notes. Building a case against me, the letter ended with, "We believe you deserve better, and will support whatever decision you make going forward. Just know that what you're experiencing isn't okay, and it isn't your fault." I was shaking with rage by the time I finished reading. How dare they interfere in my marriage? How dare they act like I was some kind of abuser? It was all Trisha, I bet. She'd always been jealous of what Richard and I had. That same day, I found out through a mutual work connection that Richard was considering a job in another city, similar to a position he'd mentioned years ago that I'd immediately shot down because I didn't want to move. He hadn't brought it up again until now, when he was planning his life without me. The combined revelations of the intervention letter and his potential move finally cracked something in my defensive shell. For the first time, I faced the possibility that I might actually lose him forever. Not because he was overreacting to a joke, but because of who I'd been throughout our relationship. The weight of that realization was crushing. A year has passed since that dinner party. Our divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Richard moved to that other city, and, from what I can see on the social media accounts I still check from a fake profile, seems happier than he ever looked with me. I've had exactly 0 successful dates since our separation. Turns out my direct personality that Richard tolerated for 8 years isn't as charming to new men who don't have years of emotional investment. 2 guys actually told me I was too negative after just 1 date. Me, the life of every party. The final blow came last week when I saw a photo that Trisha had forgotten to hide from public view. There she was at a baseball game, leaning against Richard and smiling like she'd won the lottery. The caption, "Perfect day with this one." I was shaking so hard I dropped my phone. Trisha and Richard? My former best friend and my ex-husband? The betrayal was almost physical, like someone had punched me in the chest. I immediately called Trisha, ready to unleash hell. When she answered warily, I didn't hold back. "You jealous, backstabbing bitch. You were after him the whole time, weren't you? You planted all those seeds in his head because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. You organized that whole intervention letter. You always hated my ass and were just waiting for your chance." There was a pause, then Trisha spoke calmly. "Melody, this is exactly the kind of reaction that pushed Richard away. I didn't pursue him until months after you two were separated. And for the record, I didn't organize that letter. Caleb did, after watching his brother be belittled for years." "Liar," I screamed. "You ruined my marriage. You turned everyone against me." "No, Melody," she said softly. "You did that all on your own." I hung up and immediately texted Richard. "Real classy moving on with my best friend. Guess that joke about upgrading was about you, not me." His response came hours later, just 3 words that somehow hurt more than anything else. "Trisha didn't break us up, you did." I blocked both of them everywhere after that, though I still check their profiles from my fake account. They look happy. It's sickening. Some days, I miss the comfort and stability of my marriage. The way Richard would handle all the things I didn't want to deal with. The security of knowing someone would always be there, no matter how I behaved. Other days, I'm still angry. At Richard for not being able to take a joke. At Trisha for her betrayal. At our friends for turning against me. At the universe for punishing me so harshly. I've made some changes, I guess. I'm better with money now because I have to be. I think twice before making certain comments to new friends. I've learned a lot of practical skills I used to rely on Richard for. Maybe I could have been more sensitive sometimes. I can admit that now, but he could have spoken up sooner instead of pretending everything was fine for years, then suddenly deciding one joke was worth throwing away our entire marriage. And Trisha? She's the real villain in this story. She saw her chance and took it. Some friend. The irony isn't lost on me. I joked that if Richard died, I'd be remarried within a year. Instead, he's very much alive and happy with someone new, while I can't even get a second date. Life has a sick sense of humor sometimes, but unlike Richard, I can actually take a joke, even when it's on me.